Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now I've never seen a PC that looks quite like this before. What started live as a standard HP Z420 has been transformed into an ammo box style setup. It's a bit beaten up to be fair, but this only adds to the theme. It also came with this ammo belt being carried here by reinforcement, who quickly departed the battlefield before suddenly returning and getting stuck in no man's land. We'll make a soldier out of you yet. Just in case the monetization police, or real police, are watching, these aren't so much 50 caliber rounds as they are Calibri. That's right, they're pens. It would probably still hurt if you fired it at someone, but the only damage I'll be causing is the emotional kind through the power of a strongly worded letter. While the reinforcement was busy refueling, this gave me the chance to take a more in-depth look at what I think is a pretty good looking system. The paint job is quite cool, and the previous owner also attached two handles at the top, which adds to the aesthetic and makes this heavy old beast far easier to carry. But let's open it up. Ah, look at this guy, he gets it. Never leave a man behind. Oh, mate, where are you going? Okay, not sure if that's an ally or an enemy. It looks a bit half-eaten, to be fair. Anyway, I paid just over £100 for this thing, and for that we get an Intel Xeon E5-1650, 32 gigs of RAM, as well as a 240 gig SSD and a 1TB hard drive. The seller has also added a graphics card, which is a bit of a custom job in itself. According to the listing, the fans didn't work when it was purchased, and even replacement ones didn't work, so we'll have to investigate that at a later date. However, the seller of the HP here improvised by adding a separate Molex powered dual fan kit. I don't think I've had any experience with these before, but hopefully it'll do the job for now. The card itself is a 4GB GTX 970, which at the time of this video is still supported by the latest drivers and should still be somewhat capable of gaming with respectable performance figures. If it doesn't overheat, we'll soon find out. I'm sure it'll be fine. First time turn on then, and I noticed a RAM warning first thing, which was related to a loose module. I forgot that there was another 16GB installed the other side of the CPU under the fan. One of these was loose. After reseating all of them just to be sure, the machine booted into Windows, which is installed on the solid state drive, so it's nice and snappy. The seller also left a few programs installed like Steam and Epic, which is appreciated, but I always recommend a clean installation when buying a used PC. With our ammo box all working, it was time to show it some action. Let's get into some gaming tests. Now the Xeon CPU dates back to 2012, and the 970, what's left of it, dates back to 2014. Before the gaming, we'll have a quick check of the DVD drive, as I always do, to see what the previous seller has left behind, if anything. In here it seems we just have the Wi-Fi adapter driver disc. We got a little USB Wi-Fi dongle in the box, along with an HDMI cable and power lead. So what I will say is that I'm quite pleasantly surprised by the temperature of the GPU. The CPU does run a bit warmer, as these old Xeons often do, and it's always worth replacing the paste when you buy an old PC. So we're seeing about 80 degrees in Starfield on the CPU, and the GPU is hovering at about 60 to 70 degrees. Even more surprising than the temperature of the card though is the fact that Starfield is running with 30 frames per second in and around the busy city of Aquila. We're seeing 30 FPS on the dot, almost, with a 1% low of 21 and a 0.1% low of 11, so it's not without its issues, and we did have to enable FSR 3 with 70% scaling, and we had to use the lowest settings, but I mean, it is somewhat playable, and it doesn't look too bad either. GTA 5 next, high settings with the detail sliders halfway and FXAA enabled for 95 frames per second. There will be some dips and drops as represented by the percentile figures, but as you can see by the 0.1% low, it's quite a consistent experience throughout. The CPU is surprisingly still capable these days, not that GTA 5 isn't an old game, I mean it's fairly aged now, but it even holds its own in some more modern titles. I think Elden Ring's a good example. Usually this runs quite poorly with older processors, but we're seeing 52 FPS on average with the 970 in the system as well. 52 frames per second here with a 1% low of 43 and a 0.1% low of 24. I couldn't really feel any dips and drops with the gameplay, but they were there according to the on-screen statistics, so that is worth bearing in mind. Overall though, I think it was a playable or more than playable experience. Low settings isn't really going to get you that much higher. I mean, you're not going to hit a consistent 60 FPS with this system, put it that way, but I think 52 felt pretty good. Counter-Strike 2 up next, 1080p with the lowest settings here. Medium also ran just fine, the performance wasn't all that different. 102 FPS, although we're using the lowest settings, AA was off. FSR was also off, so this is native 1080p here for 102 FPS on average. The 1% low was 53 and the 0.1% low was 29. So all in all, not too bad, but what is pretty bad is my gameplay performance, as always. Cyberpunk 2077 up next then, lowest settings at 1080p with FSR 2.1 set to quality. Now this was actually playable with at least 30 FPS with native resolution, maybe over 40 FPS to be fair, but with FSR 2.1 quality, which isn't as distinguishable from native resolution as some of the more intensive presets, 53 frames per second wasn't bad. I mean, the game still looks fairly sharp, and this frame rate means that it was more than playable considering the specs we're using. The percentile lows weren't too bad either at 40 and 27 respectively. Let's finalise today's results then with Red Dead Redemption 2 at 1080p. I chose the ultra textures, everything else was set to its respective lowest. In some cases the option was off. The geometry level of detail was set to max, the grass level of detail was set to 2 out of 10, and TAA was set to medium. I think the 32 gigs of RAM definitely helped in some scenarios, but aside from that, this pairing was fairly evenly matched in a lot of cases too throughout today's testing. The E5-1650 could probably benefit from a faster GPU in some cases, and on certain boards you could even overclock it. I think certain versions you couldn't, but I think these older ones you could. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Anyway, Red Dead 2, 50 FPS on average with these settings, 39 as that 1% figure, 38 as the 0.1% low, so very consistent even in and around Valentine here. I'm not sure whether I overpay for this system. I mean, standard Z420s were going for very similar money, to be fair. Maybe some were a bit tidier than this, but you know, I love these unique things. I love when people customize their systems like this, and in this case it's just more fun to look at than a standard paint job, you know, especially when you open it up and you've got a card that's been customized as well. Very different here, but we'll have to see if we can fix that thing. Although saying that, the dual fan Molex thing did a pretty fair job, to be honest. So that's all for this one. Thank you for taking a look at this custom ammo box PC with me. Sort of custom anyway, I guess. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like. Of course, leave a dislike if you didn't. I stopped saying that for a while because it's sort of irrelevant with the new system, but there we go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already and you want to, of course. And hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one, when hopefully we'll be checking out another random eBay find.